must be perfectly fluent in at least 2 languages if she were to be a refined debutante and catch a suitable husband. 8-year-old Queenie, known to be a quick-witted and fast-learning young girl with a tumble of auburn curls and sparkling impish green eyes, was brought in from the village each day to be taught French and High German in order that Beatrice might practice her own conversational skills. As for Beatrice's rudimentary French and German writing skills, they had been deemed beyond hope and were to be forgotten about forthwith. Even though Beatrice's stepmother was French, she was far too engaged in a hectic social life, which frequently took her to glamorous parties in London, Paris, Monte Carlo and beyond, to idle away her time on academia, especially when, according to Iris, Beatrice hadn't shown enough flair in her younger years. Iris had also declared that revision was a tedious waste of time and that Beatrice should show humility and recompense for her shortcomings by learning alongside an uneducated and much younger village girl who would most likely pick it all up in half the time that it had taken Beatrice. "So that ought to keep you on your toes." So, together with her French and German conversational skills, thanks to her insistent stepmother and Swiss governess, Miss Paulette, there were now only 10 lectures and 10 lessons in first aid and nursing standing between Beatrice and her ambition to help the soldiers fighting on the front line in France. Not that it was imperative to have language skills, but Beatrice thought it might give her a little something extra to offer. And Lady Dorothy had explained that it wasn't only English-speaking soldiers who required nursing. There were Frenchmen too. Some German soldiers, prisoners of war, as well. Of course, she would need practical first aid training. A hospital in London, perhaps. That's what Lady Dorothy had recommended, to get her foot in the door and show her mettle. And they really were rather keen to recruit volunteers. Drawing her knees up to her chest and placing her slippered feet on the edge of the velvet-cushioned chair, Beatrice wrapped her arms around her legs and hugged the feeling of possibility into her. For she could see a way forward now. It was as if a light had been switched on deep within her, sparking a frisson of hope that she felt barely able to contain. Not that the bleak battlefields of France were a cause for elation, certainly not. No, it was very much more than that. She had to do something. The newspapers were full of lists, the names of soldiers killed in the trenches, pages and pages of men, some only mere boys. Thousands on the very first day of the war in 1914, and it had been relentless ever since. Fathers, sons, cousins, uncles, nephews, her own dear brother Edward, having been enlisted at the start of the war, had mercifully been missing from the list so far.
But for how much longer?
Beatrice carried a perpetual sense of foreboding that seemed impossible to shake off. Although, for the first time in her life, she felt that she also had an opportunity, a sense of purpose. Of course, father would protest, preferring she marry Clement Forsyth, the odious son of his banker in London. But how could she, when her heart was with another? A secret love. Because Bobby worked in the stables, mucking out and tending to the horses, and so would never be suitable husband material as far as father was concerned. Beatrice's heart had almost broken in two when Bobby had gone away to fight for his country, and not a moment went by when she didn't think of him, wrapping an imaginary shield of safety around his beautiful body so he would return to her arms once more. The only comfort being that Bobby and Edward were together in the same pals battalion. Queenie's older brother Stanley, too, along with many of the other men from the village, with their camaraderie to keep their spirits up until they could return home. Beatrice treasured the photograph of Bobby that she kept inside her diary, alongside the pages where she had written about her endless life.